konsumen berbasis customer centric itu yang bisa sebetulnya dijalankan di Indonesia dan ataupun mungkin negara-negara lain juga, dan apabila customer outcomes framework atau kerangka perlindungan konsumen berbasis pelayanan kepada masyarakat itu bisa dinyatakan sebagai salah satu kerangka yang terbaik begitu untuk saat ini. Apakah bagaimana masyarakat awam, begitu ya kita katakan, bisa memahami itu? Silakan Pak Juan Carlos.
Thank you very much. For many years, we have observed several types of limitations in traditional consumer protection frameworks. These frameworks were developed at a time when consumer protections were minimal in many countries. Understandably, policymakers focused on quick wins or short-term rules that could resolve collective problems. Frameworks then would often focus on compliance with detailed requirements on font size, contract clauses, point of sale disclosures, key fact statements. These measures were relatively easy to implement, but they focused too much on providers' compliance with specific detailed rules. They did not focus on the actual consumer outcomes or results or consequences of the actions taken by providers when consumers engaged with them. Those type of traditional consumer protection measures put the ultimate responsibility on customers to analyze information and identify problems, not on providers to look out for the interests of their customers. So in the past decade, we have seen several countries implementing a new type of consumer protection framework, a framework that is more customer-centric, that is focused on the outcomes or the results attained by consumers from engaging with financial services, with financial institutions. We believe that this is a more effective framework that will help shift the mindset of both regulators and providers so that they always seek the interest, the benefit of consumers. We have observed the implementation of 3 sets of measures by the countries that we have analyzed. And we have analyzed over 12 countries as well as standards from different global bodies. So the first set of measures is for financial sector authorities to agree on a set of customer outcomes in consultation with providers, with financial institutions, as well as consumer representatives. These customer outcomes should be stated from the perspective of the consumer, of what consumers should expect from their engagement with financial services providers. Based on a review of these frameworks, CGAP has developed a set of 6 customer outcomes that are fairly universal. And these are the following. First, suitability and appropriateness. Second, customer choice. The third is safety and security. The fourth one, fairness and respect. The fifth one, voice, customer voice. And all of them, in a way, contribute to a 6th one, which we call meets customers' purpose. And I can actually tell the way we define customers, meeting customers' purpose. We define it that by accessing and using products that are designed and delivered in accordance with the principles outlined above, and by getting the services that I, as a consumer, need, I am in a better position to increase control over my financial life, to manage a shock, or to attain other goals. It's just an example of how this sixth customer outcome is framed from a perspective of the consumer. So that's the first set of measures, setting up explicitly customer outcomes from the perspective of the consumer. A second set of measures consists of strengthening the dialogue between the financial regulators and the providers, including industry associations, such as the FinTech Industry Association, and strengthening the dialogue between the financial regulators and the representatives of consumer groups, the consumer society. This strengthened dialogue will help all of these actors to think and agree on this set of customer outcomes and on the measures needed to instill outcomes perspective. We would also make sure that customer outcomes are considered at all levels of financial sector policymaking and regulation. This means making sure that regulation, monitoring, supervision, and enforcement of rules are customer-centric, and that all staff are empowered with tools to identify issues that hinder positive customer outcomes. And the third set of measures is the introduction of key regulation. Based on our research, we have identified 6 main regulatory elements. 3 that are focused on internal provider culture and processes, and 3 focused on provider interactions with customers. Briefly, the 3 focused on internal provider culture and processes are: first, culture and conduct governance. For example, requiring boards and senior management to set customer-centric strategies, policies, and procedures, oversee conduct risks, assess customer outcomes, and to set individual accountability roles and responsibilities for key staff. Second, conduct risk management regulation that sets up explicit responsibility on customer outcomes for managers, risk officers, compliance officers, and internal auditors. Third, financial product governance regulation that include a set of processes and controls for assessing and developing products throughout their life cycle, and they may include regulatory powers to withdraw or amend products that cause significant consumer harm. Then the 3 types of regulation focus on provider interaction with customers would be regulation on customer insights that emphasize the need for providers to gather and analyze information on customer needs, objectives, and constraints, and that follow minimum data protection and privacy safeguards. Then regulation on customer assessment and engagement that focus on how providers assess customers and offer products that fit their needs, and including some regulatory measures around advertising and marketing practices. And the third and last one would be customer recourse regulation that looks at how providers collect and use data on customer inquiries, complaints, and disputes, and how monitoring and evaluation systems allow providers to analyze this data and address issues. And in some cases, this also includes regulators strengthening complaints resolution and developing platforms that enable better consumer communications, rich data analytics, and information sharing. Thank you.